Well, hello there and good morning. I wanted to give you some feedback on your first lesson plan that you submitted to me. So I've got some thoughts and some comments to make. Again, the outline is fine, but it's missing a few things that I wanted to bring your attention to. And the first is, at the top here, you call it the title of your lesson plan. I would switch that to concept, because what these are of course the concepts that you're really going to engage. So and also make sure you include the strand. So this is an economics lesson. So you got your grade level 3rd grade, social studies, but specifically somewhere we want to make sure we know it's economics. And then the concepts, which are capital, human, and natural resources. So those are the three concepts. And really the concept is resources. And then we can break that concept down into the three different types that we look at in economics. So make sure you start with the strand, economics, the concepts, resources, and now one of your objectives says bartering. So bartering is a concept as well, and that's where in the standards, the concepts we see here are goods, services. So what is this concept of goods and services? What's the concept of bartering? What are the concepts of the natural resources? And again, we use the standards to try and understand what are the concepts, what are those specific pieces of the content that the state is saying, well, they need to know this. And then we use that to teach something that's meaningful and authentic. So using the standards, I will say your standards are fine, they make sense, but I think you've got too many standards for this lesson. After I went in and read your engagement phase and your instruction phase, what I noticed was, I think you are addressing reasoning skills, and you are kind of doing something about the bartering, but I think that the crux of your lesson is really rooted in producers using natural, human, and capital resources. And I think at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is you're having students read a story to understand the difference between the three types of resources. I ultimately think that's what this lesson is about, which means we want to rephrase our objectives, and maybe at the end of the day, what I would do is actually flip your entire lesson. Instead of beginning with all of this, I would start with reading the story, because the learning, everything that the students are going to learn could emerge from the story. And in your engagement phase, what you have a lot of happening is you're asking them questions, and you say, let them guess a few guesses. And then you say, then I will explain what a capital resource is. I will tell them, I will share with them and give examples. You want the students as much as possible to be doing that in the class. So instead of you telling the kids what they should be uncovering, and they should be thinking about it for themselves. And so if you use the story, The Ox Cart Man, as a beginning for that, they can read through it, and you can ask them different questions, and you can do the columns in the classroom with the students in the groups, and then what you do is you have them make something with those 4 columns. So you've got all the information now, you give it to the kids, and you ask them to create something. And so students will independently draw the same 4 columns in their notebooks. They are then to finish adding the products from the story along with resources to create it. And so it sounds to me like what you want them to do is they're drawing this information that they now have. But you can do all of that without explaining this. You can flip the whole lesson. I think an objective for this, if I was going to write this myself, my objective would be my 3rd grade students will read The Ox Cart Man to differentiate between natural, human, and capital resources, completing a graphic organizer with the whole class. That would be one objective. And my next objective would be my 3rd grade students will use the graphic organizer about natural, human, and capital resources to write their own story about going to the store to buy and sell products for their peers to read. And so there you see how we're containing all of this inside. The students are acting in order to learn something, and through that action they can then express that learning. And it doesn't have to necessarily come from you as the teacher. You guide them and you provide the assistance, but you don't have to tell them up front. They can develop that out of this story, and I would suggest perhaps having them read another story as well, if you can find another story that deals with natural, human, and capital resources. Something else I noticed that was missing here at the top is there's no compelling question. Now, we always want to make sure we've got a question or a sub-question that the lesson is answering. As I read through, I noticed you were asking some leading questions here in your engagement phase. And all of this really revolves around, I think, the question of why are some things expensive and other things not expensive at the store? Or a compelling question might be like, how do we know how much something should cost? Because that all depends on the types of resources that go into it, as well as the production. And so a sub-question might be, what goes into different products? What are natural, human, and capital resources? And then how does trade work? And so what I've provided you with in my write-up is a couple of ways to rethink the lesson, okay? And I'm not saying, of course, that what you did was wrong. What you did is a lesson. It's a social studies lesson. I think it is strong in making them understand the differences, but I think there's a way to turn it more towards inquiry, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the students themselves to be more active. I think you picked some good standards. However, I think you tried to put too much into the lesson, and I would suggest maybe stepping a little further back. Let's just focus on 3.3.1 before you even get into this. You're doing a little bit of all of these, yes. But if we focus on this one and then identify, well, could we make this into a simulation? And if it becomes a simulation, then yes, I think a simulation would be able to get to the bartering as well as the resources and then the skills. I think 3.3 and 3.3.4 lend themselves towards a simulation. What do you think? But that's something we could develop down the line. So take a look at my writing that I provided you. Take a look at the feedback, and we can chat again, and you can let me know how you're thinking about your lesson plans. Again, full credit for this one. I like the idea. I like the Oxcart Man book. I like it when we let students read and think out loud. I think that's very good. We just want to do less telling them the answer and more writing down what they say so that they're working in their world. And that's really the key, right? We want to work in their world and get them up to a different understanding. And then having them explain that in some way, like a story. Thank you.